All right, so answer to the first question from earlier today. Because it's the quickest one, I can knock it out pretty fast. All right, so gun number, again, in reference to when. There's more than one gun number depending on your application and your profession, but we're gonna stick to this one because it's pretty universal for everybody that shoots. Okay, so to start off with number one, basically you need to plug your gun into your ballistic solver. I use Hornady 4DOF. I also use the AB software. It just depends. I have an AB Kestrel, but I also have AB on my phone, and I have 4DOF. Either one doesn't matter, but you just need to know which one because we'll get into that in a little bit in a second. All right. So first things first, put your gun in there. You put your round in there next, right? So for me, I'm running a 308 round. Okay. It is the, give some space here, the 175 grain SMK hollow point Hotel Sierra. Okay, I shoot the same bullet basically that I shoot for my profession in the military, just so I understand that bullet's capabilities more and more. So that's what I train with my personal gun and at work. So for me, that's the one I always use. Basically, it's the same one I reference for every one of these videos. Okay, muzzle velocity. All right, once you plug in your muzzle velocity, so my current personal rifle is running 2714 feet per second out of the barrel. Okay, chronograph, lab radar. I use a magneto speed for this one. I have lab radared it, and it was with, I think the lab radar said 2713. Magneto speed said 2714, so basically I just kept the same number. All right, from there you need to set, you can do all this on your solver. You don't even need to be out in the range once you have that data, okay? So once we have step 2 done, if we have not already acquired that information, everything else can be done on the solver, whatever solver you're using. Okay, so we start with setting our wind direction for full value. It can either be at the 3 or the 9 o'clock. Okay, if you're using Hornady 4DOF, it'll ask you for clock direction in degrees, so 90 or 270. Doesn't matter which one, as long as you keep it consistent for the whole thing. It won't really matter. It doesn't take very long. Okay, once we've done that, depending on what solver you're using, if you're using AB, you need to turn off your spin drift in order to get an accurate reading. Okay, if you're using the 4DOF, you cannot turn off spin drift, but when you get to your range card, you just slide to the right till you get to the wind drift, not total wind, not spin drift, but just the wind drift column. Okay, so understand which one you're using. Make sure you have it set correctly so you're not calculating spin drift into your equation. Okay, so like I said, either turn it off or use your wind only column. All right, once you've done that, easiest way for me to do it, which I have in my notebook here, which once we get to it, I'll put it up here on the board, is increase mile per hour at full value 1 mile an hour, and then write those numbers down. Then 2, write them down. 3, 4, go up to like 6 miles an hour. Depending on the caliber, you may need to go 7 or 8 miles an hour. All right, make sure it's full value. Doesn't matter if it's 90 or 270 or 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Okay. A more ballistically efficient round is going to need higher, so you might want to start at like 3 or 4. I started at 1 for this just to get the point across. Okay. From there, make sure you set your range card if you can to 100 yard or 100 meter increments. It will be faster because those are the numbers we want to work with, those 100 yard or 100 meter increments. Okay. If you go every 25 or every 5, you're going to be scrolling forever. It just takes more time, but you can still do it. It doesn't really matter. All right. So, like I said, for the sake of time, I'm just going to write this chart out because I already pre-wrote it. Plus, I only have one phone, so I can't use my phone to pull the data while I'm using it for this. All right. So, we will start with, again, just so everyone's tracking, my 308 round, pushing 2,714 feet per second. Okay, so I'm gonna have a 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and just for informational purposes, I will go all the way down to 800, just to show the comparison all the way out. So I'm going to start at 1, we'll move to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5 miles per hour. Clean these lines up all the way to the end. There we go. All right. So I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm just gonna pull these out of my notebook that I already have written down, just to again speed the video up, to get the information out so we can get to the point. So at 1 mile an hour, we're looking at just wind. These are our numbers that we are looking at for my particular round with this muzzle velocity of 2714. Okay, so that is our first column. Okay, well, I'm grabbing another marker. The purpose of this is to see basically what our gun number is for wind, right? So we want to figure out what wind we want to be thinking in when it comes to analyzing wind and figuring out what our wind calls are going to be and how to make the most efficient wind call and the fastest wind call can be effective. So at 2 mile an hour, we're looking at 0.04, 0.09, 0.13, 0.19, 0.25, 0.31, 0.38, and 0.45. All right, I'm going 2 numbers right at the decimal point for a reason, and we'll get into that once I get all these numbers up here on the board, because you're going to have to round and make the best decision at the end, because the numbers will not line up perfect, because nothing ever does. Unless you have the magic muzzle velocity, which I don't know what it is, but I definitely don't have it. So 0.06 at 3 miles an hour, 0.13, 2028, 0.20, 0.28, 37, 0.37, 0.46, 0.57, and 0.68. All right. And then we'll get to the last 2 columns here. So we've got 4 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour. 0.10, 0.17, 0.22, 0.27, 0.34, 38 and 47, 0.38, 0.47, 0.49, 0.61, 0.62, and 0.77, 0.62, 0.77, 75 and 94, and 91 and 1.3, 0.91, 1.13. All right, so now that we got our chart, the goal here is to get our wind call to match our yard line. That's how we get our gun number, right? So our first number, if this is what I'm gonna blow one of these up here so it's easier to see. All right, so I'm looking for at 100 yards or 100 meters to equal a 0.1 something, right? First number right at the decimal, okay? You're not always gonna get this, right? Perfect world scenario, you get 0.1, 200 would give us 0.2, and so on and so forth, right? So we're gonna find the numbers that match the best. So I can easily tell right now 1 mile an hour doesn't work, right? Because all the way up to 800, I barely get to 0.2. So I'm gonna drop this out of my chart, because I know 1 mile an hour is pointless. 2 mile an hour, getting closer, still pointless. I never make it over half a mil at 800. I know that's not going to be any good because you can't measure that small, right? At 3 miles an hour, I'm getting a 0.06, a 1.3, a 2.0, but we're getting closer, but we're almost there. It's about half of what I want, okay? So I'm going to drop the 4 mile an hour column, or I'm sorry, the 3 mile an hour column out of the way. It's going to leave me with the 4 and the 5 mile an hour. So like I said, it's never going to be perfect. All right, so at 4 mile an hour, I'm getting a 0.08, which if I rounded these numbers, right, to that first number to the right of the decimal, so I'll blow these up nice and big. We got 4 mph and our 5 mph. Do these at the same time because these are going to be my two competitive wind velocities. 0.08 rounded up would give me a 0.1 at 100. That's what I'm looking for. A 0.10 is going to give me the same thing. So right now 5 mile an hour is looking the best, right? Go down to the next one. 200, I'm getting 0.17. Can round that up to 0.2. 0.22, we can round that down to 0.2. So now I'm matching up good for the first 200 in yards. I'm doing this in yards, by the way. Just if anyone's curious. Okay, 300, I get 0.27 and 0.34. So that's where we start to see some shift, right? It went from closer to a little bit further. It's getting closer to 0.3. It's a 0.03 away from that. Here I got 0.34, which rounds down to 0.3, but it's further away from that 3. So I'm going to keep my eye on that because as they get out to the next distance at 400, I'm at 0.38, which will round up to 0.4, 0.47, which is going to round up to 0.5 because this number is 5 or more. All right, so we just round up or round down, round to the closest. Get down to 500. I'm at 0.49 and 0.61. So this is going to give me a 0.5 when I round it. That's going to give me a 0.6 when I round it. So from here I could stop and go with 4 mile an hour gun is what I have. That's what I'm going with because that way if I have a target at 500, I know 4 mile an hour wind, full value, pull right 0.5 or push left 0.5 based off of direction. Okay, but just to make sure and see how far out I can go, we go to 600 at 0.62, I'm looking at 6. Here I'm getting 0.77, so I'm looking at a 0.8. Right here at 700, I get 0.75, so I can choose if I want to go up or down, right? And at 5 mile an hour, I'm getting a 0.9, so I'm going to a 1.0 at 700. Normally, for a 308, you're looking at 600 and beyond, you want to add 0.1. So normally you would round up. So for me, because it's at 5, I always round up at 5. That's going to give me a 0.8. So I know between 600 and 700 is where I have to start rounding up. So I would probably give it a 650 and in is where I want to stop. And that's my gun number, right? Now just to confirm, see we go to 800, I get a 0.91. So that's going to round to 0.9. So it's still +1. And here I'm getting all the way to 1.1, so I'm at +2, or +3 actually. So I know here at this location in North Carolina, I have a 4 mile an hour gun with this data. Okay, so that means at a 100 yard target, I'm thinking 0.1 for 4 mile an hour wind, full value. 200, I'm thinking 0.2, 300, 0.3, 400, 0.4. So when I am assessing wind, I am thinking in 4 mile an hour. Right, I'm looking at, okay, I have full value wind at a 300 yard target. I'm assessing about 4 miles an hour, or hold up my Kestrel, get a 4 mile an hour left to right. Then I know push left 0.3 for a 300 yard target. 400 yard target, I would push 0.4. So that's how we get our gun number for wind for our rifle, so we can get faster at assessing wind and give us a number or a baseline to use in order to assess wind, make a wind call, and get on target as quickly as possible. Basically, it's just a more efficient way of dumbing down wind instead of having to find out what the wind is at our position, assess the wind down there, do a wind formula, or go into our Kestrel or a Fordhoff system and plug it all in and then see what it tells us. I can just go 600 and in if I know it's 4 mile an hour whether I can see it down range or I hold up my Kestrel and I have 4 mile an hour in my position. That's what I'm going to go with because I have no other indicators. All right, I'm thinking in 4 mile an hour, which means range to target is my wind call. So 600 is 0.6, 500 is 0.5, 400 0.4, 300 0.3, so on and so forth. If you get into those weird spot where it's like a 270 yard target, it would be 0.27, so I'm just going to round up to 0.3. We're still rounding regardless because you can't make increments that small. All right, so I hope that answers that question relatively quick. Again, if you have any other questions, please go ahead and reach out. And if I can do it on the dry erase board, I will knock it on the dry erase board. If it's going to do something that takes a little bit more time, like some of the other questions that I got today, I will take a few days, reach out to some people, gather some different opinions, and then I'll put it together either in a post or in a video that's just going to take longer for me to build. All right, guys, thanks. Later.